For your eyes only, only for you. No one can see what I can see, and I hope that you do too. Those aren't the words, but I really don't care. Hold on, I'm getting a text message. It's from my landlord. For your eyes only, only for you. Dear Alex, it's 8 a.m. Please stop singing. You're waking up your neighbors. Not only that, but you're waking up the whole building. Thanks. Oh. Welcome back to my series of James Bond reviews leading up to No Time to Die in April. We are just about halfway done. After this one, we will have a dozen more Bond films to review before No Time to Die. This is the 12th Bond film, the 5th movie to star Roger Moore as James Bond, 1981's For Your Eyes Only. As you can see, I was already singing the theme song. For Your Eyes Only sees MI6 enlisting Bond to retrieve an ATAC from a downed submarine, a tracking system from a downed submarine, and has to stop it from getting into the hands of corporate businessmen who are actually greedy bastards. Along the way, he meets Melina Havelock, who is seeking revenge for the death of her parents, and she teams up with Bond on his mission. They come across some dangerous men, the likes of which Bond has never seen before. Full disclosure, I really do like For Your Eyes Only when I'm watching it. Right after I watch it, instantly forgettable. It's very low on my list as to where I rank the Bond films because of that reason. I could not tell you a single thing about the plot other than it's that Melina Havelock, a girl, I almost just forgot her name. Like, for Christ's sakes, movie, come on. Going to get revenge because apparently one of these businessmen killed her parents, and then Bond having to go retrieve this ATAC tracking device. That's all I can really tell you. I can tell you certain events about this movie. I can tell you certain things that happen in this movie. I cannot tell you how they relate to the plot whatsoever, though, because this movie, for me, is instantly forgettable. This is a good Bond film when you watch it, but right when those credits roll, it easily slips my mind and becomes one of the lower-ranked, lower-tiered Bond films. I'll say that. I like this movie's opening. This, I don't know why we've always had this James Bond is just a codename theory when we have this opening with Roger Moore's Bond visiting the grave of his dead wife, and Bond got married in the George Lazenby movie. So with Bond visiting Tracy Bond's grave, I never really understood how that codename theory that James Bond is actually just a codename, and that's why we have all these different actors playing James Bond. I never really understood how people actually thought about that, because there's so many clues and so many points of evidence throughout the series that whole James Bond is just a codename thing is all bullshit. No, 007 is a code name. James Bond himself is an actual name for a human being. He's an actual person. His code name, 007, is a code name. That's his agent code name. A 00 is a code name for a 00 agent within MI6. James Bond is a person. I don't know how that theory kept going throughout Skyfall, but luckily Skyfall just debunked that whole thing. And even though this and License to Kill should have already done that, I don't know how people even thought about that, even when Skyfall was being released, when there's clear evidence in this pre-title sequence, and in some instances in License to Kill, that James Bond is a person, not a codename. So this debunks that theory if Skyfall doesn't already do that later down the line. I actually find this pre-title sequence to be thrilling. Here's the thing. It's Bond disposing of an old nemesis who isn't named. It's so obvious that this enemy is Ernst Stavro Blofeld, but they don't actually say his name because of the whole legal battle that has been ongoing with the series since Thunderball. As you remember, in my review for Thunderball, I said that that the name of Spectre and Ernst Stavro Blofeld and those aspects of the story, actual story of Thunderball itself, was supposedly written by a man named Kevin McClory. So when Ian Fleming used that as the basis of his novel without giving him credit, and they used the plot from Ian Fleming's novel in the movies, that led to this whole court battle. And the rights of Spectre, Ernst Stavro Blofeld, all of that went to Kevin McClory, and it resided with his estate after he died. Now, that's why, even though it's definitely Ernst Stavro Blofeld in this movie, they don't name him, and you don't see his face, because they couldn't use any likeness, they couldn't even say his name, because of that long, ongoing legal dispute. But it is clearly obvious it's Ernst Stavro Blofeld, so Bond gets rid of Ernst Stavro Blofeld, supposedly, for the final time, and he doesn't show up in any other movie until EOM Productions was able to get the rights to Spectre and its various properties back after the release of Skyfall, which led to the release of Spectre in 2015, and then being able to use that organization and that character once again. It is a riveting opening for a Bond film, but knowing all of that just kind of takes you out of the movie, especially where you can't see Blofeld's face and he doesn't have his signature cat and he's not stroking his cat. It takes you out of the movie a little bit. The rest of the movie, like I said, is fairly good. After how bad Moonraker was, I mean, I don't know what its critical reception was upon release, but for me, after how bad that movie was, they had to make a Bond movie more like this. They decided, after the sci-fi elements and the campy tone of Moonraker, that I wanted to go with a more grittier and realistic approach for this Bond film, and I think that works. I think this is definitely one of the more serious Roger Moore Bond films. There is some camp, no doubt, especially that car chase in like the little village where he meets Melina Havelock, and she's in that little buggy, and they're being chased, and Bond and Melina's car like falls on its side, and everybody in the village just is able to push the car back up onto its wheels like it's no problem. It's literally one of the dumbest moments ever in a Bond film, but it just puts a gigantic smile on my face.
I'm afraid we're being outhorsed.
And like I said, there's so many great sequences in here. The hockey team fighting Bond when he's on the ice, the ski chase when Bond is trying to escape from Kriegler and his henchmen, when Bond kicks Locke, who is in his car, over the cliff, just killing somebody in cold blood. Classic Bond moments in this movie, when Bond takes the AT-AC at the end, throws it over the cliff instead of giving it to MI6 or the Russians. That's a great moment. I love Bond climbing the mountain at the end for the monastery, but everything, the story around it, is just instantly forgettable. I cannot tell you a single thing other than Bond has to go and get this AT-AC tracking device. I cannot tell you a single thing about what that tracking device does. I cannot tell you a single thing about Melina Havelock in this movie either, other than she's a survivor of her parents' deaths, and she's trying to get revenge on the businessmen that killed her. And these businessmen, who are actually portrayed as the villains, this movie does a really unique trick in that it presents this man Columbo as the main villain, and he's really not the main villain. It's actually this man Christados, played by Julian Glover, which is a really interesting twist that you're led to believe it's somebody for the first half, and then the second half of the movie, the villain is actually presented as somebody else. I always like when movies can do that. Like Captain Marvel did that with the Skrulls and the Kree. Iron Man 3 did it. I love twists like that. I'm a sucker for twists like that. But again, the story in between everything else just is instantly forgettable. It's a well-made Bond film. You got a lot of practical effects here. I mean, the ski chase, you have some great wides. The head-on shots of Bond skiing are obviously on a green screen, but it doesn't look horrible. It's a well-directed movie. It's directed by John Glenn. It was his directorial debut. He went on to direct the next 4 Bond films after this. It's just, again, the story. I cannot tell you a single thing relating to these events in the film. It is one of the most forgettable Bond films, despite how much fun you're having and how good you think the movie is while watching it. To give you some more background on the plot, yeah, I have to read this off of my iPad because I don't remember a single thing about this. Apparently, British information gathering vessel St. George's holds the AT-AC, which is used by the Ministry of Defense to communicate and coordinate with the Royal Navy's fleet of Polaris submarines, and that ship is sunk, and so Bond has to go get this tracking device before the Soviets, because I guess I guess if it gets into the hands of the Soviets, it could order attacks using the Polaris' ballistic missiles, and then somehow corrupt businessmen get into this plot. Yeah, literally, I am literally reading this from Wikipedia. That is how insanely forgettable this movie is. That is the biggest issue I have with For Your Eyes Only. Another issue I have with For Your Eyes Only is the character of BB. BB is supposedly 18 years old in this movie, and yet she's trying to bang Bond. And you know how old Roger Moore is in this movie? He had to be at least 53. Because I know he was like 57, 58 when he made A View to a Kill. Yeah, Roger Moore at this point is a little bit old to play Bond. And when 18-year-olds are trying to bed him, that's just creepy. Roger Moore could be like her great-great-great-great-grandfather or something. That's just messed up in all the wrong ways. It makes Bond aggressively attacking women more tolerable and this more creepy. At least Bond's trying to get information out of those women. This is just borderline like, alright, that's borderline statutory rape. Let's not go there, okay? That's a huge issue I have with this movie, and it's a huge issue that I have moving forward with the Bond series as well. Sometimes they cast a lot of actresses as the Bond girls who are a lot younger than the actual Bond actresses. Sometimes it works, like the Daniel Craig movies with Daniel Craig being in his 50s and Léa Seydoux being in her 30s. I think that actually works because there's an actual human relationship there. It's not just like, hey Bond, I'm horny, I want to bang you, and Bond's just like, alright, let's do it. It's nothing like that. There's actually something of a tangible relationship there, and I feel like now we're in a day and age where people in relationships are actually far more older than their actual partners. Like, look at Harvey Keitel and his wife. Harvey Keitel's like 80. His wife is like 49. How do I know this? Because I met Harvey Keitel, and I know what his wife looks like in person. Look at Harrison Ford and his wife. Harrison Ford's pushing 80. His wife's like 50. I mean, it's more common now, but like at the time this movie was released, I feel like it was just like, what are you doing? You had to mention the fact that she's like 18 years old. That's just pushing a line. Like, if she was like 25, 26, it's like, alright, fine. I could buy it a little bit more. She wants Bond because, you know, he's a secret agent. Everybody wants to spend a night with a secret agent, I guess. He's Agent 007 banging 25-year-old women, 26-year-old women. Go for it, man. She's like, I'm 18. I'm a virgin. It's like, oh, that writing. Oh. I can't stand that. Also, Milena Havelock, I've never been a fan of Carol Bouquet's performance in this movie. Just kind of flat, if you ask me. She just has that one facial expression on her face the whole time where it's just like, she's all pouty the whole movie. I get it. Her character is seeking revenge against Kristatos because Kristatos killed her family. But man, can you actually act with your face? Jesus Christ. Acting is more than just talking. It's facial expressions and body language. I don't know why I'm getting so riled up over this. Like I said, the events in this movie I actually really like. It's a movie that when you're watching it, I can go along with it. It's a grittier approach to the series. It's a more realistic approach to the series. It's what the Bond series needed after the disaster that was Moonraker. I think Roger Moore is fine in this movie, although he's starting to show his age, but he still has the capability to play Bond in this movie. Everything surrounding these events, it's got its classic Bond moments. It's got a great theme song that is totally from the 1980s. But like the actual story around it, around these events, while it is good, is instantly forgettable the second you take that Blu-ray disc out of the player and put it back in the case. It is instantly forgettable, and they should have really thought about the age difference between Bond and one of the Bond girls in this movie, because it does not work. If I could remember the actual plot of this movie, and not just a broad explanation of the plot, I could actually tell you more about the plot instead of having to Wikipedia the plot, I would say that this movie is one of the best Bond films, but it's a lower tier Bond film for me, and I'm going to give For Your Eyes Only a C. Definitely check it out, especially if you just watched Moonraker, but I feel like it's one of those movies that I can't tell you what happens 5 seconds after it's over. Guys, thank you for sticking with me for this Bond series. Stay tuned very soon for a review of Octopussy. Yes, there's actually a movie titled Octopussy and A View to a Kill. That will be wrapping up the Roger Moore era of Bond. Then we'll be moving into the Dalton era, and I can't wait to talk about the Timothy Dalton movies. You guys are the best. Thank you for watching. I will leave my link to my website in the description below. You will find all my links to my social media accounts there. My name is Alex Madden, and I'll see you at the movies somewhere.